Scroll through any social media feed right now, and what do you see? It's all the victory laps, the brand new car, the massive house, the perfect relationship, the launch of $1 million company.
Right? It's the ultimate highlight reel. We are obsessed with the destination, but nobody is posting a selfie from rock bottom, crying themselves to sleep, wondering if the universe or God just completely forgot about their existence.
Exactly. And that creates this massive illusion. We see the mountaintop and say, I want that, but we completely ignore the brutal, unglamorous climb it took to get there. Today, we are tearing down that illusion. We're looking at one of the most intense, dramatic comeback stories in history to understand why the ugly parts of the journey, the parts we desperately try to hide, are actually the most essential. And just so we're clear from the jump, this is not Joseph as in Mary and Joseph at the manger. I'm talking about Joseph from the book of Genesis, the favorite son of Jacob, the kid with the special coat and the wild dreams, the one whose own brothers threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and accidentally set him up for the craziest from the pit to the palace story you'll ever hear.
It's the story of going from the absolute bottom of a literal pit to the highest palace. And it asks a really uncomfortable question. Are you willing to endure the crushing process required to handle the massive success you keep praying for?
Let's start at the finish line just to set the stakes. Picture Joseph, a guy who is basically the second most powerful person on the planet. He's running an entire empire, wearing the royal signet ring, riding in the VIP chariot. His wisdom is literally saving nations from starving to death. That is the ultimate success shot.
The classic I made it moment. And when we see people in that position today, our immediate reaction is usually, I want that level of influence. Open that door for me. But if you only look at the throne and ignore the trauma that built the leader sitting on it, you're setting yourself up for massive disappointment. You'll either drown in jealousy looking at others, or you'll hit your first roadblock and assume you're a failure.
So let's rewind the tape. Long before the royal chariot, this guy starts out as a 17-year-old kid. He's clearly gifted. He's got the favor of his father. He's walking around in this incredibly flashy, custom-made coat, but he's also kind of a brat, right? He's telling his older brothers about these grand dreams where they are all bowing down to him.
Oh, he was definitely gifted, but he was completely unformed, and that is such a dangerous combination. He had the calling, but he lacked the character. His brothers didn't look at him and see a future visionary leader. They just saw an arrogant kid, and that sparked a lethal level of jealousy. Honestly, this is where so many of us start. We have this deep sense that we are meant for something big, but our maturity and our humility are lagging way behind our ambition.
Which leads to the first massive reality check. His brothers snap, they strip him of that fancy coat, throw him into a dry well, and traffic him to foreign merchants for loose change. In the blink of an eye, the favorite son is a slave on a one-way trip to a foreign land. How does someone even process that kind of whiplash?
Imagine the psychological torment of that journey. There's no smartphone to distract him, no motivational podcast to listen to, just the rhythmic marching into the unknown. He's probably thinking, wait, the dream said people would bow to me, not betray me. What went wrong? But here is the profound truth about the pit. It's the place we never volunteer to go, but it is exactly where pride gets starved and true dependence is born. You can't rely on your image when you're at the bottom of a hole.
And let's bring that into the modern day, because most people listening aren't dodging literal hungry brothers in a desert. But a pit is a pit. It's a universal human experience.
Absolutely. A pit is just an environment of total powerlessness. For some, it's a financial pit. You aren't just living paycheck to paycheck. You are holding your breath every time you swipe your card, praying it doesn't decline. Every notification from the bank sends your heart rate through the roof.
Or it's an emotional pit. You are highly functional on the outside. You go to work, you crack jokes, you post the smiling photos. But the second you get in your car and shut the door, the silence is absolutely deafening.
Yes. And some people have been in that emotional pit so long, they've started decorating it. They've brought down a blanket, some snacks, a sad playlist, and they've just accepted, well, I guess this is my permanent address now. And then there's the spiritual pit, where you are doing all the right things, but inside you feel completely abandoned. You are wondering if that big dream you had was just a delusion. You feel like you have favor, but it certainly doesn't feel like favor.
I wanted to dig into that because I know you've been extremely open about your own seasons in the dark. You haven't been thrown into a dirt well, but you faced some severe drops.
Oh, I have absolutely earned my frequent flyer miles in the pit. Most people who know me only saw my highlight reels. A person once told me, hey man, everything you touch seems to turn to gold. Let's be real, I've turned some things into boo boo more times than you know. I've been in the financial hole where the math simply refused to math. What on earth did I do to deserve this? I've been in relationship pits, the kind of heartbreak where you are desperately trying to hold together something that is actively shattering in your hands.
In the career pits too, right?
100%. Clocking into a job that completely drained my soul, feeling massively overlooked and hopelessly stuck, asking that exact same question, what did I do to deserve this? But here's the crazy plot twist. Years later, when the doors finally opened, when the healing actually happened, and I found myself stepping into opportunities I knew I didn't qualify for on paper, I found myself asking the exact same question.
What did I do to deserve this? But this time it's from a place of awe.
Exactly, not a complaint, but pure gratitude. I realized I didn't strictly deserve the trauma of the pit, but I definitely didn't deserve the absolute blessing of the palace either. The pit stripped away my ego, but the blessing afterwards showed me the nature of grace. If you are screaming, why me in the dark, just wait until you are whispering, why me in the light.
That is incredibly powerful. But the journey doesn't just jump from the pit to the palace. There is this messy middle ground. After being sold, Joseph ends up in the house of a high-ranking official working as a slave, and he just puts his head down and works with such excellence that he ends up managing the entire estate. No applause, no platform, just grinding in the shadows.
I call that the overqualified and undercredited season. You are operating at a level way beneath your actual potential. You are fixing everyone else's mistakes, training people who get paid more than you, and you are entirely in the background. It feels like a holding pattern. But the secret here is that the background is not a punishment. It is a training ground. He was learning how to steward an empire by managing a house.
But just when things seem stable, doing the right thing backfires spectacularly. He gets falsely accused by his boss's wife, and despite his complete innocence, he is thrown into a dungeon. He loses everything again. If anyone had the right to just completely rage quit on life and say being a good person is a scam, it was him.
It's the ultimate injustice. He trades a mansion for a maximum security cell for a crime he didn't commit. But notice his reaction. He doesn't become bitter. He doesn't fold. He starts serving in the prison. He helps other inmates. He keeps his integrity intact. The pit destroyed his ego. The house taught him management, but the prison forged his unbreakable integrity. It proved that his character wasn't dependent on his circumstances.
Which sets up the ultimate climax. Years pass, the ruler of the empire has a terrifying dream, and someone finally remembers the guy in prison who has a gift for interpretation. In the span of a single afternoon, he is pulled from the dungeon, shaved, dressed, and stands before the most powerful man on earth. He solves the crisis and is instantly promoted to the top.
But this is where we have to completely shift our perspective on success. The signet ring, the fancy clothes, the massive authority, that was never the actual point. He wasn't promoted just so he could flex on social media and say, look at me now. He was promoted so that an entire region could survive a catastrophic famine. He was promoted so that families wouldn't starve, including the very brothers who threw him in the pit in the first place.
That is the ultimate twist. When he finally confronts the brothers who ruined his youth, he has the power to execute them with a single word. But instead, he tells them, you intended to harm me, but this was orchestrated for good to save countless lives. He looks back at the betrayal, the slavery, the false accusations, the prison, and he connects all the dots.
He realizes the pain had a purpose, and that is the absolute core of this entire discussion. True success isn't just about the geographical or financial location you end up in. It is entirely about the person you become on the treacherous road to get there. If you are only obsessing over the palace, you will completely misunderstand the purpose of your pit. If you only want the crown, you will resent the very fire that is melting down your impurities to forge it.
So we have to turn the mirror on everyone listening right now. Where are you standing in this story? Maybe you are sitting at the bottom of a pit. You feel rejected, misunderstood, and you are seriously doubting if your dreams were just a cruel joke. Your pit might be a crowded house where you feel entirely invisible, going to bed exhausted, but feeling like nobody truly hears a word you say.
Or maybe you are in that middle season. You are working your heart out in a place that feels way beneath your calling. You are watching other people get the promotions and the credit, and you are just pleading, does any of this unseen effort actually count?
Or maybe you are in the prison season. You are paying a heavy toll for choices you didn't even make. Somebody else's lie, somebody else's reckless decision, somebody else's drama has chained you to consequences you never asked for. You are praying that desperate prayer, I don't know how I got here, but please do not let this be how my story ends.
Wherever you find yourself, you have to know that the season is not wasted. The exact same presence that sat with him in the dirt well, walked with him in the slave quarters, and stood with him in the dungeon is with you right now. You might feel totally paralyzed, but your future is not paralyzed. You might feel entirely forgotten by the world, but you are not forsaken. The very struggles you are trying to hide from everyone are the exact tools being used to build your capacity.
That's why we have to stop just applauding the finish line. We have to learn to respect the brutal, beautiful journey. Because if you can find meaning in the dirt of the pit, you won't lose your soul when you finally step into the palace.
If this conversation shifted how you view your current struggles, send this to someone who is on the verge of giving up in their own pit or prison. And make sure you are subscribed because next time we are diving into the story of a young king who had to survive living in dark, isolated caves long before he was ever allowed to touch a crown. Until then, stop rushing the destination. Look around in the dark and ask, what is being built inside of me right now?